So today's video is our second in the series discussing one-ship squadrons. We've covered 5 fighters last time. This time, it's 5 bombers. What's up, JD here. Today's video is going to look into how you might be able to go about putting together an all-bomber team composition in Star Wars Squadrons. As in the last video where I discussed fighters, I will be preparing 2 builds for each faction. One focusing on morale farming, or shooting down enemy starfighters. The second build will be focused on objective attacking. That is to hit the corvettes, frigates and capital ships for max damage. Bear in mind, these builds are unlikely to enter into a top tier strategy. These builds are meant more for the casual player looking for a fun and different challenge. That isn't to say, however, that you can't score some wins with these strategies. It's also worth keeping in mind that all the information used in this video was sourced from the EA Game Changers footage. As such, it's quite possible that there will be some differences on launch. I'll put the timestamps in the description for those wanting to jump to certain points in the video, but for now, let's dive right in. First of all, I'm going to put together the build for the Y-Wing Morale Farmer. I have on screen at the moment the default stats for the Y-Wing. If you want some more information about each stat, I give a description of each in the first video of this series. Right, let's go into each component slot and see which is the best for the morale farming Y-Wing. First up is our primary weapon, and I'm in 2 minds about the best one for this build. It comes down to how well you think you'll be able to get accurate shots with the low maneuverability Y-Wing. If you don't think you'll have that much trouble, then the heavy rotary cannon is absolutely your best choice here. If you find that ships are always just moving out of your reach, then go for the guided rotary cannon. It will lower your DPS, but if it scores you more hits on target, then it might just prove to be more useful. And when dogfighting with a Y-Wing, you may need those little bonuses. Right, moving on to our engine, I think the Quad X jet engine will be helpful here. You can accumulate boost quickly at the expense of faster boost expenditure. Because you will have a lower maneuverability than almost every other craft, you can use this quickly accumulated boost to perform regular boost drift moves to get into favourable positions for dogfighting. The Slam engine might also be useful, but I feel like for a dogfighting focused Y-Wing, it just lowers your speed too much. For the hull, I've gone with the Chempat deflector hull. You'll be getting into a lot of small scraps with this build. Having more health made up of shield makes it so that you can replenish more health between each engagement, which would be really useful for this build. For shield, I think the standard is the safest bet. Conversion shield might be good, but there's only so much information to go off in regards to how it works. It could end up being more annoying due to losing your laser charge when shields hit 0. If you're very good at shield management and don't drop below 0 too often, then you can also try the overloaded shield. It will give your shields much better longevity, but as soon as they're gone, you can't recharge them, which could be a big problem. However, this build is heavy on the shield and light on the hull, so if shields do hit 0, chances are you're seconds away from having to respawn anyway. We'll see. Like I said, standard is the safe bet. Once the game comes out, make a judgment call for the other 2. For the first auxiliary, I'm going to go for the automatic ion cannon. Its 21 second duration and 19 second cooldown means that you can have the cannon going for 2/3 of every minute. And in this build, that's probably what you want to do. The wording makes it seem as though the cannon will target ships actively attacking you. Because you're chugging along in the slow but tanky Y-Wing, it's likely that faster craft will get the drop on you. The ion cannon can then hopefully put out some ion damage and cause the ships to become immobilized, giving you the opportunity you need to get them in your sights and finish the job. Right then, for the morale farming Y-Wing second auxiliary, I'm going to go for the multi-lock missile. This is a great anti-starfighter missile and especially useful when targeting groups. You have 5 shots and each shot can target up to 4 ships. Try to limit use of this to when you have 4 targets available for maximum effect. This will make the most of your 5 ammo in an all Y-Wing team composition. If you decide to have an accompanying support, or if you're on the defence near your frigates, then you can afford to be a bit more liberal with your missiles. Right, for countermeasures. If you've already watched my fighter build video, then you probably know what I'm going to say here. Seeker warheads. You get 4 of them, their cooldown isn't huge, and they work both at range and whilst turning. When you don't have a support on your team, it seems like they're the most useful countermeasure. Okay, so let's take a look at the final stats for this build. We have hull 780, shield 1560, speed 110, acceleration 121, maneuverability 70. So for this build we've prioritised shield over hull. This is because we can overcharge the shields to double strength and recharge them between engagements, making it useful for a dogfighting craft. I've tried to limit losses in the other stats too. Unfortunately, the Y-Wing being the lumbering beast it is, it's never going to be the fastest, nippiest dogfighter out there. But if we compare these stats to a default X-Wing, we can see that we are a tankier craft, able to regen a large portion of health via shields. Our speed and acceleration aren't drastically lower, and our maneuverability is only very marginally lower. Plus, we also have the automatic ion cannons that can pump out ion damage to surrounding attackers for 2/3 of every minute. Now, we can't know for sure until the game launches, but I have a feeling that this build could be a really effective anti-starfighter nuisance-causing craft, and I'll definitely be giving it a go shortly after launch. Okay, so let's move on to the objective attacking Y-Wing. As with all objective attacking crafts, when it comes down to primary cannon, you should really make the choice between the highest DPS cannon or the ion cannon. The ion cannon will help you strip shields and be effective against capital ship subsystems, but the regular damage heavy rotary cannon boasts a good DPS and solid rate of fire. It will be effective on corvettes and frigates once shields are stripped, and a solid choice for general damage against capital ships as you approach their subsystems. If you've got 2 or more objective attacking craft, it's probably a good idea for at least one to be ion focused though. For engine, I'm going to have to go with the Slam engine. This build doesn't need speed and maneuverability, which would take a loss here. But in return, the Slam engine means that you can approach your objective with full power to shields, yet still be building boost. Then, once you've finished your bombing run, you can utilise that boost to get out of harm's way, ready for your next run. I foresee this engine being so valuable in these kinds of builds. Obviously we'll have to wait and see if I'm right though. For hull, I've gone with the reinforced hull. We're going to be taking a lot of fire on these bombing runs. Should we run out of shield, then we need as much hull as possible to keep us in the fight. Again, we sacrifice some acceleration and maneuverability, but that's worth it for this build. For shield, I'm leaning towards the conversion shield. Our main focus is going to be attacking with our auxiliaries, so it's worth losing out on laser charge if our shields get knocked down to 0, if it's going to keep us in the fight for a bit longer. Right, so for our first auxiliary, I'm going to go for the Ion Bomb. You get 10 4,000 ion damage bombs to absolutely obliterate frigate and capital ship shields. I've not seen what strength the capital ship shields have, but I'd wager that 40,000 ion damage will be enough to get through. I'm curious to find out. In the late game, once you've eliminated the enemy capital ship's shield generator, then it might be worth swapping this out for the proton torpedo or the composite beam cannon. You can use these to target the ship's subsystems on your way to doing a bombing run with your right auxiliary. As for the right auxiliary, I'm going to choose the proton bombs. These are exclusive to the bomber class. As with the ion bombs, they drop directly below you, meaning you can glide under enemy shields and deliver a high damage payload. This might be the auxiliary I'm most excited to try out when the game comes out. For countermeasure, we're going to go with, you guessed it, Seeker warheads. You're going to have a hard time evading missiles in this build, so having a high amount of countermeasures is necessary when you don't have support to replenish you. Of course, if you're using this build in a varied team composition with a support, feel free to pick any countermeasure. Right, now we've got all the components chosen, let's take a look at our final stats. For hull, we got 1920. For shield, we've got 1200. For speed, we've got 88. Acceleration, 79. And maneuverability, 53. And let's compare that against the morale farming Y-Wing. This is of course my favourite part, and more than anything, this is the aim I'm trying to achieve with this series, to show how variable a particular ship can be based on your component choice. When it comes to combined hull and shield health, the objective attacking Y-Wing has an additional 780 working health. It loses out in the rest of the departments, but despite its poor speed and low maneuverability, we get the added benefit of always accruing boost, even when max power is on shields or lasers. When you get into a tricky spot, make sure to utilise that boost to stay in the fight. Okay, so we're done with the New Republic All-Bomber Squadron build. let's move on to the Imperials. I've put the default TIE Bomber stats on the screen now. As before, I'll start with the morale farming TIE Bomber. For the primary weapon, I would go for the Sinar Rotary Cannon. The DPS and rate of fire on this is great. You also shouldn't need the guided cannon with this build, as this build will retain high manoeuvrability. For engine, I would go with the twin ion jet engine. You'll build up boost much quicker in return for faster boost expenditure. This is a great engine choice for quick bursts of speed here and there as needed, and suits this build well. For hull, I would take a risk and go for the agile hull. You'll lose a portion of your health in return for better acceleration and manoeuvrability. Even with this loss, however, you'll still be able to take as much damage as the default TIE Fighter or X-Wing, and the increased manoeuvrability will help you get targets in sight to unleash your high damage per second primary cannon, as well as put your auxiliaries into play. Speaking of auxiliaries, for our first, I think I would have to go for the Goliath missile. This missile explodes with a relatively large area of effect, even if countered. Try and look for groups flying together and fire into them for maximum effect. For the second auxiliary, I'd have to go for the multi-lock missiles. As with the Y-Wing, these missiles let you fire off 5 shots that can each target up to 4 opponents. Again, you want to look for groups to get maximum effect. Right, for countermeasures, it's just the trusty Seeker warheads again. At this point, I feel like on launch they're going to turn out to be terrible, and I'll feel like a fool. But as I've said, without a support, you want to take countermeasures with the most amount of uses. Right, let's look at the final stats for this build. We have hull, 2000, speed, 115, acceleration, 194, and manoeuvrability, 86. In my opinion, these stats are remarkably good for a bomber-class starfighter. Its hull is the same strength as the default TIE Fighter. Speed, acceleration, and manoeuvrability are lower, but not drastically so, and we pack much more firepower. As with the Y-Wing morale farmer, I can see this build being a lot of fun, and a huge surprise to enemy fighters and interceptors who are expecting slow and easy prey when you engage them in a dogfight. Now let's move on to our last bomber build, the objective attacking TIE Bomber. For the primary cannon, as with the Y-Wing, you're going to want to take either the highest DPS physical damage cannon, which would be the rotary cannon, or alternatively the ion cannon to strip shields and attack subsystems in the late game. For engine, I would pick the same as the morale farming bomber, the twin ion jet engine. This will allow you to use small boosts regularly. This is ideal for putting yourself in position for a bombing run quickly so that you limit the oncoming damage you'd receive on approach. Also, it allows for a quick escape once you've made your run. For the hull, we're going to go with a reinforced hull. We'll be taking damage during our runs and need all the hull strength we can get. This will put us at twice the hull health of the morale farming bomber. For our left auxiliary, as with the Y-Wing, you'll want the ion bomb. And then, for the right auxiliary, you'll want the proton bomb. This combination will allow you to make an initial ion run to strip shields, followed by a proton bomb run for maximum damage. In the later stages, once you've destroyed the capital ship's shield generator, then you might want to trade out one of the bomb types for the beam cannon. This will enable you to inflict high damage to the capital ships at greater range than the bombs. And for countermeasures, we're going to go for the Seeker warheads. In all seriousness, when the game launches, pick the countermeasure you're most comfortable with. Seeker warheads would be my preference for an all-bomber build, purely because it has more uses before ammo needs replenishing, which can only be done at your frigates or capital ships without a support class ally. Right, now that we've finished our final build, let's take a look at the stats. We have hull, 4000, speed, 115, acceleration, 110, manoeuvrability, 56. When you compare this with the morale farmer, you can see how we've been able to double the hull whilst maintaining the same decent speed. We have, however, had to take a hit on our acceleration and manoeuvrability, which is completely fine for this build, as we don't need to keep nippy starfighters in our sights, just large corvettes, frigates and capital ships, and we can certainly outmaneuver them. Let's also bring up all the ship stats to compare across the factions. So it's looking like the New Republic morale farmer wins in terms of health compared to the morale farming TIE bomber. Speed is comparable, yet marginally higher for the Imperials, but for acceleration and manoeuvrability, the TIE bomber wins hands down. The Y-Wing's lower manoeuvrability is made up for by its automatic ion cannon. This is able to target attacking opponents that aren't in your sights, which is a huge boon. When it comes to the objective attackers, then the TIE bomber seems to win in all areas. However, The Y-Wing's main bonus is that it can overcharge shields for a total health of 4,320, whilst at the same time gradually accruing boost thanks to the slam engine. As you can see, and this will be the same with all classes across both factions, there are definitely pros and cons to each side. And that's all for this video. 2 more left to come in this series, Interceptors and Support. I'll be sure to drop those as soon as I can. In the meantime, let me know if you'll be trying out some of these builds. Are you and your friends planning on flying a one-ship squad? Or are you just curious to see what kind of ship variation is available for each class? Let me know in the comments below. For now, we'll wrap things up. But as always, if you've made it this far, then thank you so much for watching.